recording the session today, and I would encourage everybody to keep that in mind. When people are in a question and answer environment like this, a lot of times I will hear people make some pretty incriminating statements. So as we have our Q&A here today, I would encourage you to keep it kind of generic and kind of hypothetical, not talk about, your particular company unless you're comfortable with that risk or your particular job. And what I work on is trying to get third parties to the restoration relationship, meaning not the contractor or the customer, but others who are involved on the periphery to somehow change what they're doing. So when you tell us there's a third party out there, they're doing A, B, and C, we're going to take a serious look at that. We have a voice, and it's an important voice. In my very first conversation with Greg Pine, the Vice President of Pricing at Xactware, I asked him what portion of Xactware licenses are represented by restoration contractors. He said the last time he saw information on that, it was about 50%. So imagine if a segment of your client base representing 50% had concerns over particular issues. You're going to take that seriously, aren't you? That's a lot of license fees paid every year. So let your voice be heard and please get involved in this. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A here. I had a very interesting conversation during the break with Mr. Bill Loveland of Xactware, and he wants to, I think, set the record straight from yesterday. Would that be accurate? I'd like to invite you up here. You have a microphone. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I won't take long, but it concerns me a little. I've been in the industry with Xactware for 32 years, and prior to that, for 10 years as a contractor. So I just want to let you know that there were three of us brothers, for those of you, some of the old ones like Norris, Gerhardt, and others, they know, and Patrick, but we've been around a while, and we were contractors. We were not from the other side. But we started this because there was a pricing system out there, PMS CompuPlane. You guys remember that? Okay, they said, well, this house is in an affluent neighborhood, so it's a type 3 house. But you can have a mobile home with nice countertops in it, right? So we were contractors, and we put together the best thing we could. And our concept then, and still is, that we were getting surveys from PMS CompuPlane asking us how much we wanted to charge for a light fixture to detach and reset a light fixture. We said, this is kind of silly, really, because what they ask us and what reality are probably two different things. How somebody would normally respond to that as a contractor. We need to know what people are using in the estimating process. So in those days, we used 5 1/4-inch floppy disk. We used to back a FedEx truck out in our early days, and we would fill it up with feedback disks. We sent them out to every customer we had. And frankly, I think we had better response in those days than we do now. Currently, there's a feedback tab in Xactimate where you click it and you feed back your data. But our concept is that you as contractors will look at your costs and look at our rates, which we consider as accurate as anything out there. And I want to say in our defense, and this is part of my defense yesterday, is when I used to use a typewriter and R.S. Means book in a home tech book, we used to call it the gospel according to R.S. Means, right? Now they say it's according to Xactware. This is not a problem that didn't exist when we were using books. It's always going to be a problem as long as somebody's paying and somebody's receiving. My contention is we are very willing to work with RIA and contractors in general to come up with a better process, and we appreciate your feedback. I appreciate Ed visiting with us. And can we do a better job of surveying? Perhaps we can. And that's where this comes to some value, and I appreciate that. But we are also very open to phone calls. If you have concerns in your area about the electrical rate, for example, in Bozeman, Montana, then maybe you should be on the phone calling our pricing department, say, you know, we're in a small community, this rate hasn't changed for a long time, what can you tell me? And if we can independently verify that, we do, and we do it all the time. We don't claim to be perfect, and we don't claim our prices are anything other than reference prices for your area. Another quick point was on the ablation technology, the laser ablation we saw yesterday. We will not put that in the price list until you guys put it in and start using that. They can contact us, but we need your prices. If you're charging for Matterport, a good example we just heard a minute ago, we won't put a charge in for Matterport until you guys start charging for it. When thermal imaging first became popular, we put it in as a bid item because nobody would put it in at any particular price that had any consistency. In fact, most people did it for free. So my point is, we're very open to feedback. We do need you to put new items in because we report on them. You can contact us at Xactware. Just look at our 800 number, ask for pricing, or email us at pricing@xactware.com. It's as simple as that, and we look forward to working with you. I've been at RIA since the 80s, so I have come almost every year since then. We're a big supporter of the organization.
Yeah. Thank you. Before you step down, could I ask a couple of follow-up questions?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned you won't put an item in until contractors start charging for it. What would you say to the contractors in the audience who say they're not allowed to charge for something by the insurance industry until you put an item in for it?
You've got to put it in. I mean, you F9 note it right in the old days, or you put a note in nowadays, but you've got to put it in. If it's a cost, you've got to put it in. And I don't think there's a contractor in this room that thinks Xactimate fits every situation, and you can't put some line items in there.
Okay, you're talking about putting it in, but before you were talking about actually charging for it. Are you saying that Xactware is not going to report on prices until they've actually been charged in the market?
Well, that's correct. Like ablation technology would probably have to have multiple inputs by contractors to what they charge per square foot or however they choose to charge for it before we will determine, okay, that needs to be an item. We could also work with the manufacturers, determine the cost of equipment, and work on that. But we do need you to start using the technology and charging for it, putting line items in the price list, because we do know new items.
I believe when we were speaking earlier, you said back when you were a contractor, you were using RS means for pricing?
And home tech, yeah.
Okay. When you came upon a new technology or something that you wanted to use that wasn't already in RS means, did you ever have an adjuster say, if it's not in RS means or one of these two, you can't charge for it, we're not going to pay for it?
I don't recall that, and they didn't have the presence we have, if that's your point.
Yeah,
but
okay.
At this point, we don't have the same presence.
So,
I mean, we have more presence than RS means did, surely.
So should they charge for it even though the adjuster isn't going to pay for it? The adjuster says, no, I'm sorry, we don't pay for that.
I was an estimator for many years, and if you haven't argued with an adjuster about what they're going to pay, you're not much of an estimator. I'm just saying, I hear what you're saying, but we can't resolve those negotiations. They're always going to be there.
Right. You don't want to get in the middle in the disputes between the contractor and the insurance company, right?
No, that's kind of frontline type.
Yeah, that's
unless it's some anomaly that's out of order, you know.
Right, I understand.
You can point out that, and we're glad to work.
Yeah, you spoke a couple of times about feedback, and my understanding is you're saying that Xactware is relying on the people in the audience here to provide the data to Xactware in order to come up with the prices. Is that right?
Yes, and Mike Fulton and Greg Pine did a presentation at RIA conference this year explaining that feedback process. We try to educate on that as often as we can. I know Ben Justison has done several presentations I'm familiar with, but if people are not feeding us back their information, then it's not getting counted.
Is there something in the Xactware license agreement that requires the contractor to give you guys information?
No, it's voluntary.
Okay. Why should the onus be on the recipient of the service to provide the data that enables the service provider to provide the service in an effective manner?
If this is a debate, I'm not going to go on that.
Okay.
That's just the way it's set up and it's always been. And, if you can come up with a better method that you can explain to our pricing department, welcome.
A contractor said to me the other day, he said, you know what, if I go out and I remodel a kitchen and the homeowner complains that the kitchen cabinets weren't done right, I can't respond to that complaint by saying you didn't help me put in the kitchen cabinets. It's my job to put in the kitchen cabinets. How would you respond to that analogy here?
Would you repeat that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm talking about the reliance on the contractors to provide the feedback. And what I'm hearing from a lot of contractors is they're expecting Xactware to take the active role and to actually affirmatively perform the surveys instead of relying on the licensees to provide that information.
Well, if people understand properly our role, we statistically analyze what prices are used in the estimating process, and it has always been voluntary, and it still is voluntary for the contractor to participate.
Okay, and how frequent are the surveys?
You'd have to ask our pricing department. I don't know that.
Okay. If I'm working on a legal case and I show up at trial and I forget to file a motion that needs to be filed, and I miss a deadline, and I lose the case, I can't tell my client after I've lost the case, you know what, you didn't help me, you didn't give me the information I needed. I don't think that flies. Does that fly?
I just want to give our side. I don't want to get into a debate, but I see your point, and you're welcome to continue.
Okay, so I think it's the will of the industry that the surveys be done on a more frequent basis. Does Xactware get that message?
I think that's noted, and it's not something I heard from you. I heard it from Mr. Springer previously.
Yeah,
in a conversation we had with our pricing department here.
I was looking at some pricing graphs this morning, and I noticed that in the last 5 years, the price across the country for cleaning remediation technician in the U.S. only went up 8% in 5 years. Now, everybody responded yesterday that they think the prices are going up at least 5% per year, at least 5%. Some are telling me 10. But let's just say if it's 5, that would be 25% over the course of 5 years. So how would you respond to those who are concerned when they see in 5 years across the country, it's only gone up 8% for a cleaning remediation technician?
I mentioned the contact methods we have. We're totally open to any discussion with any local contractor that's concerned about their pricing in any given area.
In Phoenix, Arizona, the price for cleaning remediation technicians was completely flat for the 3-year period from January 2015 to January 2018. In Redding, California, there was only a 2% increase from January 2015 to January 2019. And then in May of 2019, it jumped 6%. In Boise, Idaho, the price for cleaning remediation technician, according to the Xactware graphs, was completely flat from January of 2017 to January of 2019. It's gone up a total of 8% in the last 5 years. In Minneapolis, it was flat from the beginning of 15 to the middle of 18. In Richmond, Virginia, it was flat from the beginning of 15 to the beginning of 17. It went up a few percent between the beginning of 17 and the middle of 19. And then there was a 20% spike in July of this year.
Okay, I don't have the detail you do in front of me, but I will say cleaning was 10 cents a square foot for 10 years when I was in the businesses. That was before software. So it does require feedback, and it requires them to increase their pricing. And if they're in a competitive environment, most people will not change the common items.
It also requires surveys on the part of Xactware, right?
To some extent, yeah, but we do report on what they use in their estimating process.
So is the feedback the primary source of data that's being used as opposed to
I know we have a statistical formula we use that was developed by Dr. Bruce Brown and Larry Walters in our early days. It's a cluster analysis you referred to yesterday. And I don't know what the weight is. We have depended more and more on surveys as the larger we become.
Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Pine at Xactware has repeatedly assured me that Xactware has no incentive to make prices too high or too low. They have emphasized repeatedly that it's very important to opt into the email price inquiries that Xactware has. You have to actually do that, and you will hopefully start to receive some inquiries from them. I want to see by a show of hands of the contractors in the room, who of you believe that you received a pricing survey at any point in your career from Xactware before the AGA was rolled out this year? How many surveys people received? Come on, raise your hands. There's 1, 2, 3. So we got about, what do we have here, Steve? About 100 people? 3%. This creates a concern that the surveys aren't being done. You follow that concern, right?
I am concerned if that is truly the case, but what you realize is there's a lot of surveys that go unnoticed. So we do the feedback process. That's all done on most program work and other work all the time.
At our annual convention this year in Phoenix, Mr. Pine mentioned to us that in some instances, Xactware has found out when it made phone calls and identified itself as Xactware performing a survey that people didn't want to share. So what they started doing instead of that was to not mention that they were from Xactware and just do it more anonymously. That has created a concern among the membership that there's no way to validate or track or confirm that this has been done, and that Xactware is asking restorers to simply take their word for it that these phone calls are taking place when it seems a little bit mysterious. And I think I speak on behalf of the membership when I say we need more transparency and we need more communication. And I'm very grateful to you for being here today to speak with us about that. And I think and hope that you follow where we're coming from, right?
Yeah, your concerns are noted, and we're glad to work with you.
Okay, who has questions for Mr. Loveland? Yes.
So we've been told for years contractors are bad at responding to the pricing feedback. If we're about 50% of your customer base and the insurance company side is about 50%, how good is the insurance company side at providing feedback on pricing, especially compared to the contractors?
You know, I don't have the percentages at my fingertips, sorry. I can respond if you want to give me your card or whatever, I can find that out.
A lot of contractors are concerned, Mr. Loveland, that the price for cleaning and remediation technicians remains flat because when a survey is done, the contractors are just reporting back Xactimate's prices back to Xactware. And this is what some have lovingly referred to as the circuitous death loop. This is very, very different for our industry, as I'm sure you're well aware. When you're doing a survey with HVAC, plumbing, or electrical, you're talking to trades that are not reliant on the insurance industry. Okay, most of their work does not come from insurance claims, and so they're not mandated to follow a particular pricing structure. But these ladies and gentlemen here, your customers, they are reliant on insurance dollars, and that's where Xactimate comes in. I'm hearing the majority view that Xactimate has a monopoly over this, and so they believe that they're stuck and they're locked in because the only prices that are being used to determine Xactimate prices are Xactimate prices. How do we break that loop?
Feedback. You've got to have the nerve to charge what you need to charge.
The adjuster says I won't pay for it, we only pay Xactimate prices. It's not about nerve, it's about getting paid, right? So they're not going to want to issue any check whatsoever unless you bill according to Xactimate. That's what they're stuck with.
I hear what you're saying, but I've been in their role for many years. I know it's always an argument, and I know you can win many times as long as you explain yourself.
Okay, we're out of time. Thank you very much, Mr. Ogden.